match once a month. So yeah, just changing around the format. Still working on a few different things at the moment. I'm been changing around all the cameras, running the iPad here and stuff like that. So bit of a messy one, but we'll get in there. How's you, Adam?
Good man. I've officially moved to Austin, so I've been in my new place. First time having an address in like just about 2 years. So I've been here for about 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
feels good, dude. As my office every day and to kind of get into normal routine. So feeling really good. Minus the
excellent.
like 35 Celsius every day, but
Yeah,
you take the wins with the L's too.
cool. So what has been going on with you last month or so? What you've been working on?
Man, you kind of set off kind of Pandora's box with me with the Seller Sessions Live.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before in one of our other chats, like I always thought AI was interesting, but it was more of a tinker tool. It was kind of like
Mm.
your cute little kind of toy that you'd play with every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't really see systemic implications for it from a business standpoint, and that was illuminated for me in Seller Sessions Live. So I've literally been going down the rabbit hole of AI ever since.
Yeah.
And so I would say 60-ish% of what I've been focused on work wise since then. So with that was mid May. So we're coming up on maybe 6 weeks. Has been around AI, basically honing in and playing with the tools, playing with the prompts that get the outputs that I want. And I've kind of seen prompts in a new way. And now really looking at it systemically. How do I get my team to use it? How do we build agents?
Yeah.
What are the parts that I need to systematize? So it's been really interesting to think about an Amazon e-com business and deconstruct it with the lens of how do I implement AI into this and how do I use that for scale. So that's been a huge part of the focus. There's a new brand project I'm working on with some ex-pro athletes, which has been really interesting. So kind of, yeah, man, the blood's been flowing again. It was a bit of an interesting thing with the tariff world. I've got a brand that's pretty susceptible to China in terms of sourcing. So had that whirlwind and kind of have now been getting back into logistical land because we held off ordering a bunch of stuff like, hey, these products might die if we're talking about 150% tariff. With that being lifted, but you haven't ordered in 3 months, so now we're kind of playing that game of chasing shipments and boats and docks and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's been really good, man. But in general, just been a really nice grounding experience, kind of having a home base again, having an address again. I've got my stuff has been in storage for years in Utah coming here in the next couple of weeks. So feels good, man. I'm really kind of hitting sync again, and it's feeling awesome. How about you?
Good. Yeah. I've been saying a few times on the shows, like I'm all in on Claude, and
Yeah,
every week there's something new comes up in terms of what we're doing. Since the conference, I'm up at 4, finishing 8, 9 at night because there's still a backlog to do because of automating the across both businesses, changing what we're doing with Databril. But last week on Thursday, I finally managed to bring someone on to take on some of the load now because it's across 18 projects. It gets messy.
it's a
And
lot.
having ADHD, I have time blindness. So I'm good for 24 to 48 hours. And you point me in that direction, I'll work like a machine. But when it comes to planning, I'm terrible. So we migrated over to Notion a while ago. I love Notion. And I tie that in with GenSpark through the MCP. And I'm about to do the same with Claude. Like literally, I'm building stuff every day in Claude. From the work that I'm doing with Data Dive, I just delivered over some work where I put a front end app on the stuff that I'm working on, and then there's also a sandbox for the logic. That means their engineering team can play around with it, and then within that, I can produce like a handoff document. So they get the artifact, like with Claude, like most people will create a project, and they're not like custom GPTs in the sense that you can share them. You have to share the project files, right? And then you basically implement on your side. Now I'm putting front end apps on the using the artifacts. So when I'm working on stuff, instead of having loads of documentation, handoff files, README files, and then the engineering team's got to pick it up. They've got something they can play with. So basically, you share the artifact. And last week, I brought on a guy called Leo, who's not only is he an expert at Notion, but he's also an engineer and an automation expert, especially around N8N. And I don't know if I shared it with you yet, but I did something for Aspicon last week, and then I redid, because I've got like a N8N flow. So in 5 minutes, you make it, it brings out an artifact like a mind map that looks like N8N with the dotted background.
Yeah.
And then you can prompt it, and then once you're happy where you are with it and decided, is that running efficiently enough? Is there too many points? You can then copy and paste the JSON file into N8N, and then what it does, it creates stickies and it puts all the details in there. But what I also did, because I was sharing it at that event, I spent a day going back and putting in what I call like quality gates. So for instance, if someone's building a complex one and they're on Claude and it's, I don't know, they're on the 20 a month, not the 75 or the 150, because the 75 is like 5x of 20, and then you've got then 20x of the £75 or $75 subscription, because you get in the sim bin. They put you in for 5 hours once you starts burning token. And so what I did is I built gates into it, which allowed it that, one, it asks questions. Do you want to build the JSON file now? Because if you've not looked at it and confirmed it and it builds a JSON file, then you're going to not only use up conversation bandwidth, you're also going to burn through your tokens. So I put gates in place so that it's all efficient. And I also put gates in place for the JSON file, because if you have to go back, let's say you can't cut and paste it into N8 and you've got a problem, you've got to go back into Claude and debug it. You've got to run the code again. And if you're running, what's it called? Not Sonnet, the other one, the coding one, I forgot. It's the name of it now. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So that obviously that's the best model for coding. I don't know why I forget the name. I'm in Claude like 10 hours a day. But yeah, when you're running the coding version, whatever that's called, and Opus. I remember it.
Opus.
Yes, sorry, Opus. Yeah. So when you're running Opus, whilst it's not that it's efficient, it's much more refined in terms it's better in terms of debugging and stuff like that. It does burn a lot more. So if you've got to rerun the JSON, so what I did, I spent a lot of time putting the gates in so that people could use it and not just go bang. You know, they just do one flow and then it's like it's game over. They're in the sim bin for 5 hours. So I did that, and I also made it so that you can have what was it that Jeff wanted? Yeah, I built in mirror board. So basically you can import a mirror board, and from that it will recreate the mirror board as well. I'll share it with you anyway. So there's that going on. But I brought Leo on last week. We got an implementation after the pod, and it's re-establishing the structure of the Notion, because the task I gave him is like, I don't want to do any project management. So give you an example. One of the things that we're rolling out, most of the meetings I end up being recorded on Fathom, right? And so they end up in your inbox. Then you want to go over there, you want to get the action points, or what I've done is I've built a Claude project so it can bring out exactly what I want. And then you've got to take it over to Notion, and then task that we... So basically it's been set up. The implementation which we'll run through is that you have the meeting, it will extract the transcript, and from the transcript it will put that into the Notion database. Then it will take out the action points, because you've got the name of each of the people that are on the call.
Yeah.
That's tied into the workspace. So then what happens is the action points will then go to my dashboard of everyone on the projects. It will send it to their dashboard, and then it will either have a default where it might be 48 hours in terms of timeline, and then the other option, you can still override it, or it will have TBA because it wasn't discussed and it wasn't clear on the call. But basically it does that part, the project management, and then as the timeline gets closer outside the TBAs, that will then send notifications to follow up on the project. So basically 80% of that is project managed. And so we've been building things like that, and each of my projects are kind of split out, and they're pretty much the same thing, right? So Claude project, then you've got handoff document, then you've got the artifacts, then you've got the conversation, whether that's going to engineering or over to design team. There's a kind of a structure there. And what you find with AI, and you'll know this as well, you can generate a shit ton of data. When you start throwing in the research, APIs, all these different things, and it's all got to be documented and provided in a way that people can understand, that's what we're automating. So I can be in Claude, I'll work on something, but there'll be separate things. There'll be like my sketch pads. So when I'm vibing on something and it's not ready, that doesn't go to engineering or design or anything. That stays where it is. So there's different protocols for those. Then that way, project management's almost done. I am going to bring in someone to manage me like a child to make sure that I do what I'm meant to do. Because my classic is I'll do what I'm interested in, not what I'm meant to do. Or it's an emergency. So I'll get up at 4 and go, shit, I need to get that done. And then in 7 hours, I'll just go into my zone, and I'll do a week's work in 7 hours, because I need a thing whereby there's guardrails around me to make sure that I'm working on the right thing. So we'll use my ADHD deficits, which there's a lot of positives as well, because you've got, when you've got like hyperfocus. Yeah. See, for me, I can hyperfocus. I wake up in the morning at 4, and once I get going, I'll look up and I realize, shit, I'm busting to go a wee, and I haven't had in.
With it.
Huh?
But if you've got to be obsessed with it. If it's not something that you're obsessed with, you'll procrastinate to the end of time, and or it gets lost,
or I won't do it. And this is the thing: is like there are some really good things about it, but then I'll forget to eat or drink water. So now I have to have a shut off on the computer, like a break 1 minute every 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes every 90. Because I'll just sit there and I'll just carry on working because of the time blindness. Before I know it, 4 hours, 5 hours gone past, and I'm like, I must go to the toilet. I'm busting to go to the toilet, and I haven't eaten, I haven't drank any fluids or anything. I just go in like that.
It's like you'll build the most sophisticated project management cutting edge thing with agents, whatever else, but forget to pay your internet bill so the computer shuts off. It's like shit like that, right?
Yeah, that's why, this is the thing. It's like, I don't like N8N, so I built a flow builder, right? Yeah. I don't like accounting, so I've just now got rid of, nearly there. I've just moved banks. I've had to, that's the lastminute.com, right? Just to back up the story a bit. 2 weeks ago, it's Sunday. The bank transfers are going over. So there's the 2 businesses and multiple personal accounts coming out of Barclays, right? I don't like accounting. Of course, I'll leave it to the last minute. So I spent 14 hours on Sunday trying to roll out where I had to go through the 2 businesses and the personal accounts. So we've come out of Barclays, and then we've gone to Monzo for a set of one of the businesses and personal accounts, and then Wise on the other. And across that, I've had to change over standing orders, because some of it's not on a CAS system where it does it all for you, right? And you think softwares, all the card payments and everything else across personal, business and everything is over 100 to do. And that was stressful, trying to get all that done, because I knew that when the switch comes, it needed to be ready, or the accounts were going to be all over the place. And now I've got this problem where I've shifted, and because, with authentication, like UV setup, like, you go, that's your email address. When I get a text message or I use Google Wolf or whatever, you have a system, right? I don't. So my personal email address is associated with Monzo. And then I've got 2 profiles in Xero on 2 different email addresses for the businesses, which are the wrong way round. And that means now I can't plug in the dashboards that I built and all the work that I've done, because they go, well, it's not the same email address. And the profile opens on the other business, not the one I want to open. So now I've got this week, sit down with engineering and go through 10 years of chaos and get all that straight. Because I'll log into something and go, look, go to your iPhone 7 and then go onto YouTube and do X, right? So that you can put in number 86. And I'm like, everything is because I just, my inbox used to be my filing system. It would be, where's that? All right, I'll search for it in my emails. That was my filing system because I'm always like jumping around. So it's like managing a child like that. So I can do really complex shit, but I can't do basic stuff
I get it.
like filing and stuff. Anyway, I went on a long one, but it's yeah, it's all caught up with me because now I want to move everything into Claude and do it properly. I've now got 10 years of chaos to clear up
Yeah,
behind.
that's the challenge. It's like the minutia, but once the dust settles on that stuff, that's where the fun happens. But I'm the same way. I'll avoid the stuff that I shouldn't avoid for an extraordinary amount of time,
Yeah.
procrastinate, whatever else, lack of discipline. But then the stuff that I care about, I'm dialed in. But eventually, there's so much sloth that you've got to kind of deal with it. But once the log jam's cleared up with some of those new systems, it should be interesting. Well, let me ask you this, Dan. I'm just kind of curious what your
Mm.
take is, but in this world of agentic AI and all these developments, and it seems like everything changes every couple of weeks. But
Yeah.
if you're an Amazon seller,
Hmm.
what are the executable frontiers that you see over the next 12 to 18 months with this AI stuff? Because again, we're now, drinking the sauce. You've been drinking it longer than I have. But if it were me 2, 3 months ago, I kind of would have been like, hey, it's interesting, but I'm not really tracking.
Yeah.
For the people listening that are in that world, they're like, yeah, but I still don't quite get it. Like, what do you
Mm.
think the implications are that are going to be real for people to sink or swim with AI within the next 12 to 18 months with an Amazon e-com context?
I think the first thing you've got to get over all this prompt engineering and stuff like that. You just make AI do what you want to do, and that's why I built stuff. Right? I'm not a prompt engineer. I'm a right brain. My brain works twice as fast as my mouth, and my mouth works twice as fast as my fingers. So I have it set up in a way that I can say, "LF, let's fucking go," right?
Yeah.
And it builds stuff. Because people will tell you, yeah, you've got to be a prompt engineer. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do things properly. What I'm saying is use AI not for what it's meant to be or what you think it is, or you don't think you can do it, right? Because I think some people get the impression it's very complicated. And I always go back to you've got to ask the right question.
Yeah.
And what are you using AI for? I'd see it's so common that people go, yeah, I was going to do that, but then I run out of free tokens or I credits or whatever, and then they stop. I'm like, I spent not a huge amount of money, but I had 6 problems to solve in my business. I must have done 200, 300, $400 worth in Manus and solved all of those, increased margins and solved problems.
Yeah. And
But I
then
see
and the
too
same
many
people have
people.
$800 worth of software for random shit that they don't even use.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it mind boggles. And the other thing is, stop copying everyone. You do what you do, right? There's only one Adam, and there's only one Danny for all the bad things in the world. Do what you do. Stop looking and going, yeah, I'll have that flow.
Yeah.
Build it yourself and build shit that matters, right? Well, look at the problem with Amazon sellers. I've been in the game 10 years, running an agency for 7. You just do not have much time. But you got the minutiae of dealing with Seller Central and all the bullshit around inventory and stuff like that. Build shit like that. And if you can't build it, contact me. I'll give you the N8M flow for free. Use that and then go on to Upwork and go and get an engineer for $50 to plug it all in. Do you understand what I mean? It's like build stuff that matters. I mean, at the very beginning, it was like, oh yeah, I can build an SEO report and all that kind of stuff. Now it's like, how do I get rid of all this tedious bullshit?
Yeah.
So then what you got now is I've cleared out 100 hours of labor on the accounting side so they can do some fucking proper work.
Yeah.
Do you understand? I want to know where I am on a daily basis, where the money is, but if it's not reconciled, then I've got to go in my inbox and they chase me and then I've got to get them and they've got to download the receipts. It's pointless, right? So think of things that are really important.
Yeah.
Build stuff that you can use and it's going to move the needle for you. Don't worry about the stuff around ranking. I know that's important. I'm not saying it. But you've got so much shit in your business. You've got inefficient VAs. Build shit that they can use to make their work easier. That means they spend less hours on the bullshit and more people are on moving the needle.
Yeah.
Right? You need domain knowledge. You got clowns on LinkedIn who go, yeah, I just laid off 15 families. You know, that's the equivalent, right? They're letting people go. Cunts, sorry.
Yeah.
To think like that, these are human beings. What you could do is take the bullshit off them that they
That's how
run
I
through,
do it too.
yeah, and use their domain knowledge and make money that way. Because while their workload goes down here, the more automation that you're doing, generally speaking, it will even out and it'll come back through at the other end where there's more volume. So they'll be doing more volume of moving the needle kind of work or creative work, and it's enjoyable versus all the labor.
And I think that's a definitive point. And I think that I've had to kind of assess myself and been aware of where some of this stuff comes from. But I think the societal logic for how we've been raised as a society, especially in business, is to think about, it started with industrialization, late 1800s and the 1900s, where that's where the 40-hour work week came and the scheduling around factories. And then that industrial complex kind of led into modern society and how schools are operated, all the rest of it. So there's some deep programming there that I've kind of had to pay attention to. But an alternative view that I have, it's very similar to what yours is, Danny, which is like, okay, my team probably spends a couple hours a day manually pulling things to give me the data and information in my daily dashboard that I want to see in my email. And there's a handful of emails I get. I'm guessing the team spends a couple hours on that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fire those employees. I don't want to. B, there's plenty of other stuff to do where if that 2 hours gets done by an agent, to your point, there's repurposed work. So I think that's one thought. But here's a counter thought, which is, or you just don't work as hard. And what I think happens there, and you alluded to it maybe in a roundabout way, is what opens up when you don't have noise for a little bit. What if you could do what you need to do in a day in 4 or 5 hours instead of 8?
Yeah.
Okay, now the industrial complex is like, well, I got to optimize and efficient, so I'm going to fire 2 people so that everyone has I'm not thinking of it that way. I don't want people to be twiddling their thumbs, but I'm thinking of it like, okay, what does that just having a pause and not doing that, what does that open up? Okay, maybe people don't work as hard, that's fine, that's part of it, but maybe that's where the creative downloads happen because I'm not in the weeds. And I think you've got to step away a little bit in this new world, and it's going to continue to change in the years ahead, where we maybe need to redefine how we look at a productive workday in terms of hours and think about it more in terms of output. And that's a big reason why I got into entrepreneurship, is I got kind of sick of the BS in corporate. And I've never done time trackers on my team in the Philippines and things like that, because I was like, you know what? I got into this because I wanted to disassociate from that rule book because I think it's bullshit. It has its, again, they're like everything. You can't go too far one way or the other. It can turn into unproductivity and laziness and all the rest of it. But what does the world look like if maybe your team just doesn't have to work as hard as they used to? And what maybe the quality of life, the time, the perspective, the context, the creativity, the energy that comes from that, maybe that produces itself in a different way, but it's not in hours worked. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic that unfolds to see how does society shift, or do we stick to this regimented industrial factory-based thing where it becomes like you've got to optimize back to how it used to be and make sure you fill those hours with something else? It's an interesting question, and I think one that is going to be pretty impactful for society here in the years ahead.
Yeah, I think, look, we are in the mind economy. Look, at the end of the day, execution's obviously the most important, but if you're too exhausted to come up with creative ideas to move the needle because you're buried in the minutia, then you're not going to move forward anyway, right? And the body and the brain needs rest. Right now, I'm still doing 16, 17-hour days. But there's an end goal, because I know that with the pod, the website, the work me and Ellis are doing now, the rollout with all the apps and everything we're working on, my data dive work, all of this stuff, it gets rid of a big chunk of this through the automation. So I don't plan to work 7 days a week from 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. and not see my wife and family. The plan is so my end goal is I don't want all the shit. Someone takes care of all the nonsense for me. I want to get up at 4 o'clock still, and I want to do what I do. That where the magic happens is 4 a.m. for me until about 9 a.m. I can pretty much solve, and that sounds crazy. I'm shit at 99% of things, right? But if I want to come up with a solution in a roundabout way that isn't conventionally solved, I can pretty much solve anything that I want. Anything I put my mind to, I can sit there and work that out. And that for me is going to be my best asset. So my best asset isn't going, have you done that thumbnail? Have you done this? When's that coming? Do you do that?
Agreed.
Or you set out work for people and they come back and they've got 50 questions and you've got the accounts department, you've got this.
Yeah.
And you're just like, can't you just fucking get on with it, right?
Yeah.
Now, if all this stuff is automated, or most of it is, and then I get better as a manager and stuff of, you know, and explaining myself, I call it the Danny filter. I end up building shit so people understand what I'm talking about. That then moves the needle more. And then what happens is when you're sitting down and going through stuff, like I have no desire to run a big team, be on CEO on fucking Time magazine. None of that shit interests me.
Yeah.
I want to sit with the design and engineering team and we have fun, you know, and we work on ideas. It's like I was changing the lighting and stuff around. I was on with Alex earlier on. And what we drop in, like the next run of stuff, like we try and update seller sessions through different ways, right? And the way that we're doing landing pages now and how we can push design forward, I'm excited about. That's the bit that I enjoy, not fucking accounting and in my emails. I don't think I've looked at my emails for about 2 days. It's bad. I can't stand emails. I don't like meetings unless they're design, creative, or moving the needle. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like I lack discipline. I don't lack discipline in certain areas. I get up and I train 4 days a week. I never take a day off training, whereas people won't train. You know, there's certain things you're disciplined in.
Yeah.
But I want to get to a place where I love what I'm doing, and I love that getting up at 4 where it's quiet and just going in the zone and working, and then cut out all the bullshit around it. Because if it's automated as well, like for instance, a lot of stuff you can do with automation, there's 2 parts to it. You've got the domain knowledge, the checkers. So you can't just have, I'll get rid of all the accounts team and then watch it all go into 0 and hopefully it works. You still need domain checkers, right? So that work needs to be done. But there are things now, like for instance, I've built some tools which will come forward for social media. You don't have to be a social media person to do the social media work, because it's just click, 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 because the rest is done for you. The creative bit's done. Does that make sense? So there is 2 sides. Like you could say, I'm going to employ a social media person to do social media so that you can pay them that money whilst they jump on Claude and use AI. Pointless.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? If they're going to use the same tools as you. So there are 2 parts to it. And there is areas where that needs domain, that doesn't need domain. And then that bit in the middle is where we do the real work. That's your creative stuff. That's your execution. That's your problem solving and stuff. And I think that's what we got to get to. It's not laziness. It's the fact that work on the stuff that gives you energy and get rid of the stuff that drags you down. Because if you think you've got like, look at an agency. Let's say you've got PPC managers. Optimizing accounts all day long, or collating the information and building them out all the reports. By the time you get to do the creative stuff, if you haven't got systems in place, you're exhausted. And you can't be exhausted to do creative work. Do you understand what I mean? It's just really taking out the bullshit that no one needs to do and let people use the actual skill that's worth it. We end up with 60 to 80% of the bullshit, and then the fun stuff and the moving the needle stuff, the creative stuff, the execution and stuff is then marginalized because of all the other bullshit. Now we can turn the dome over and switch it the other way. And I think that's where AI comes in as well.
No, and I think like a couple points there. One, I think we've talked about it before on the show, but Naval Ravikant had like a pretty famous Twitter thread. And one of the key concepts about that was, I think it's like, do stuff that looks like work to others but feels like play to you. So like as an example, in my heyday of doing YouTube videos, like 90% of the time I wanted to do it and it wasn't work. And it's like, but somebody on the outside looking in is like, fuck, I don't know what to see on camera. I got to edit it. Like it seems daunting. And that's why people would do 3, 4 episodes of videos and then they would stop because it's too hard. So for me, AI helps unlock again, but it requires a personal reflection, a personal analysis, and you've got to actually execute on it. So it doesn't just happen. But I think what AI enables people to do is to clear out. It's the same as like delegating to employees or whatever else, but it's like it allows you to clear the minutia such that you are focused on that stuff, that heavy lifting stuff that you get energy and derive enjoyment from. And that's going to be different for everybody. For an engineer, they're going to want to get in there and code. I hate that shit. For an accountant, they're going to want to get in there and automate numbers and whatever else. I hate that shit. But whatever it is for you, it's going to unlock and enable that. And I think that's super, super powerful and meaningful. And I had a second point, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I think that is one of the big unlocks, though, is that it enables you to focus on those areas that are truly unique to you, that you derive value and enjoyment from. So,
Yeah, I mean, so what are you deploying with? I know that we all go through all our different softwares, and I kept going on about Manus, and like literally Manus is gone to the museum with the Nokia phone. You'll be able to visit there soon. Like this that quickly, but it's because with GenSpark, I'm using. You were talking about agentic. This is another shift that we've got to consider as well. It's not going to be the user journey. It's going to be also the agentic journey. Like if you think about now, like I've got Playwright plugged in as via MCP. It's a lot easier to set up with GenSpark. And like for instance, what you pay for GenSpark, you get 2 to 3 times the amount of credits a month, right? Even though I burnt through them and I've just bought a load. You get 2 to 3 times more credits for half the price. So like, see you later, Manus. So now like at the moment we're working on the agentic browser. There's a couple of things like can't use WhatsApp on it and stuff yet, so I have to have Chrome open in the background. But the stuff that you can do now, and you've got things like AI sheets, and yeah, it's phenomenal. So I definitely think the way that the things are going now, Manus blew my mind, and it helps me a lot in my business to solve a lot of problems. And I feel a bit sad that I've been disloyal to Manus and said, yeah, see ya, I'm going over here, because not only is this an agentic browser, it's easy for me to plug in the MCPs. You literally go to the bottom, click, click, job done.
yeah.
It's so easy. And so I think what's happening now, where it's going to be plug and play, we're going to see this new shift where you are going to get to the stage where AI isn't going to be a barrier, because they say prompting. You could do voice prompts and it will understand natural language and it will understand you more. So the interfacing of that and having bots and using browsers, the point I'm coming on to now, perfect example, people go on Amazon to look for deals. Why would you search anymore? You just get, and if it's cost effective, go on Amazon, go and find me the cheapest one of these or the best one of these, da 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 da. And then you're not even going to be doing your shopping. Why would you? Why do you you'd have to sit there and search by keywords and go down the search pages for, say, specific things? Or there are people that are in, they like a bargain, they like a deal. Don't know anymore. Just, okay, I want to pay around this. Look out. Think of like Prime Day. Yeah, Prime Day comes round. They just write a prompt. All right, Prime Day's round the corner. This is what I'm after. I need one of these, one of these, one of these. When you spot it, get that, let me know the price, brings it all back. Yeah, I have one of those, one of those. And so it's no more about this, oh yeah, we got to know our customer. It's like, customer don't care. They're going to Amazon because it's cheap. I'm not saying that's for everyone, and I'm not saying everyone's going to jump on it, but that's where you're looking. Why would you search? Especially guys, right? How many guys do you know likes to go shopping? We run around the supermarket. We color code, right? We go, yeah, we have one of them, one of them. Oh, yeah. They've moved that around. Yeah, you in and you're out. Whereas your partner's just easing along, yeah, well, you know, and I'll read the label and that. It's like, come on, let's get out. Fucking shopping. I hate it, right? So if you can imagine, it's like, oh, I need this, this, and this. That's where we're moving. So what are we optimizing for? The customer journey or the agentic journey?
Yeah.
Because part of getting deals, people would get excited because they like a bargain, right? Oh, I'd like to get a deal. They'd spend hours searching. Not no more. Write a little prompt. Go there, there, there. Do you see where I'm coming from? This is that shift. What do we do about that?
Yeah.
Over to you.
Yeah, and I think the shift is probably less so individuals doing that because I do still think if I look down at the root level of your kind of middle America or whatever part
Hmm.
of the world you're in, and you kind of think about, the internet came out in 94, 95-ish,
Yeah.
and it really took until early 2000s before our parents started using it, whatever else. But it was like, what do I type into here? So I think like there's obviously it's an easier journey because we've got the correlation of the internet and phones and apps, and
Hmm.
so we become slowly immersed in this kind of a technology, and we're effectively prompting when we're using search engines, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's Amazon, Google, whatever else. So I think there's a baseline knowledge, but your Joe Schmo, I don't think is gonna know how to use AI other than to treat it like a search engine, which is obviously not effective with that, at least
But
today. So I
you
think
brought up a very good point there, right? You said it took 20 years to the internet to really start to move the needle.
where people controlled it, where they actually
Yeah.
felt where they were autonomously in control of their journey using the internet as a tool.
Yeah, I think ChatGPT got to its first. I can't remember the stat, but it was something that Max said this. He said, "Do you realise is that it took 20 years for the internet to do X?" And I can't remember it exactly. You'll have to go
Yeah.
back on the show. But ChatGPT done it in 72 hours. Now that's not everyone because there's a lot of the world's big enough to have lots of people that are into something, into the internet, into AI, right? So that can cut the lines. But I
But
agree with you. You're
yeah, I think
middle America.
but for me the challenge is that I think the people that are empowered by AI today are kind of brute force tip of the spear people like yourselves. There's
Yeah.
technologists, there's engineers. I would say it skews younger, so people that are in high school, early college, like, which is very similar to the internet, by the way. But I think like those are the people that are empowered by it and driving it today. I think for it to have mass impact, which is going to happen a lot sooner than it did the internet for I don't know, there's got to be the equivalent of Moore's law for how this AI is being adopted, but basically it's exponentially collapsed in terms of time integration. But the world that you're talking about, I don't think it's going to be a person saying, hey, I'm going on this trip, whatever else. I think that AI from the company enterprise level, you're an Amazon, whatever, it's pulling in like, hey, we're going to use our cell phone data. They walked by this store, they did this.
Mm.
They hung out with this person, I've got data on them. And they're going to correlate all this data and bring that to people. So you
Yeah.
almost have like a daily, weekly recommendation on, hey, based on how you've been living your life, what you've been consuming, what you've been talking about,
Mm.
etc. This is what we recommend for you. I think
Yeah.
the question is the gateways around data become even more interesting and more opaque, which is for AI to have empowered information to give that
Mm.
information in the best way that's going to be the most relevant. There's a lot of implications on human data access that I think come into play. Like
Yeah.
as an example, like YouTube, I don't know if you found a way around this, but like YouTube had shut down the ability of AI to crawl video. Like I had a video that was very impactful on me. I wanted to throw it into Claude project on myself to help like understand me. Like, hey, this has been really impactful.
Mm.
Derive these lessons and use it in the advice that you give me. It was a, I don't know, 3 hour long video. It couldn't scrape it because YouTube shut that off. So
Right.
like at a human level, what data do I shut off or enable enterprise AI? Because I think that's really what's going to bring those solutions that change people's lives. Is that if it requires a human being to go in and do something, I think we just know human nature, technological limitations, all those things. It's going to have a stopgap. So I think that's where it gets interesting for me. But then there's a whole bunch of data implications. So, and I think, we say all these upstarts, whatever else. I think it's going to be Microsoft, Google,
Mm.
Meta, maybe OpenAI as a new kind of thrown in there, maybe with Gronk, or Grok. I think that's limited with Twitter. But I think it's going to be these three, four horsemen, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Metas that are going to be able to potentially unlock that and drive it forward. Because otherwise, I think it's still going to be niche
Mm.
until those things are unlocked.
And I think it's interesting because Apple hasn't made a play yet. And I read an article the other day because Apple was talking about it, that they were testing all the models that couldn't solve simple, straightforward things, and how they've sat back. You know, like Apple hasn't really dived in. Everyone's been making a move, right? But Apple hasn't really gone to the level of Meta even, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on something that comes along and everyone goes, oh, it looks like we're off to Apple then. Do you see
Yeah.
what I mean? Because they tend to come after innovation, but then do it better, don't they? Look at, like, there were phones, there were types of iPads. They just did them better, didn't they? And made them more popular.
Yeah, and I think this is, it's funny. I've got a friend of mine that I got to be a little bit careful here, but I don't think he disclosed anything that most people wouldn't know. But, and there's a limit to what he knows anyway, but he's worked for Apple for a decade or so. And I asked him that same question. I said, you know, and he said, the thing about Apple is they're as innovative as they are, they're never the first. They
No.
always kind of sit back. And I think the challenge for Apple is, if I look at them honestly, is they've always been the master of unlocking ecosystem based hardware and really kind of improving lifetime value, high margin hardware, and making it so that the retention of that hardware with their ecosystem is very strong. But I can't think of a way that they've executed software in a way that's been compelling. iTunes Store, shit show. Siri, shit show, you could argue.
Terrible.
So like anytime they've done stuff with software, I feel like it's been fairly weak, with the exception of the phone and the ecosystem around the phone. So I think how Apple potentially enters this play, I don't know. Again, there's so much physical infrastructure and data involved to get good AI to train the models. So they've got a challenge there, where your Googles and your Metas and other people already have experience with that. But if they could turn the phone into AI, I think they've got a huge advantage with that middle America kind of population that we talked about. Like, I don't know how to do prompts, whatever else, but if my iPhone can intuitively do it for me. So I think that if Apple enters the game, I think they're going to use the Trojan horse of the phone. But they've got a pretty big skill set gap in terms of they've never really been good at software. And I don't know how they make the leap with just the economies of scale that are required for good AI and the training models and the data sets. But I wouldn't count them out. I think that they would have to use the Trojan horse of the phone, but it'll be interesting to see if they enter the party at any level.
Yeah, I think going back to the thing, like you said, like I live in a bubble, so then I'm going, yes, because I've been waiting for agentic browsers and more opportunity to do automation outside of N8N, you know, like literally watching it in the browser, like on Playwright for an MCP, right? That's where I kind of been waiting for. I got let down because I watched too many TikTok videos a while ago where you plugged in, and it was meant to work that way with Claude, but basically it was just a complete letdown. And it was almost like, you know, when you've installed a terminal on your Mac so that you could use Windows operating system. It was like that, and it was fucking terrible. The marketing was good, and I'm thinking, this is shit and slow, and you're working inside of a terminal. But now that literally there's still hallucination, but where we're going now is that you won't be using the software, you'll instruct it to use the software. Does that make sense? Like, we're 2 years away from basic video editing. I've seen stuff that is, I'm on the waiting list for a couple of things, but I've seen the work done editing video in Premiere Pro, which is obviously more of a advanced editing program for video editing, right? And seeing that was incredible. So we moved from that, asking questions, getting a flood of answers, and then checking if it's hallucinating, to building out automation and connecting APIs, databases and stuff like that. Now you've got Claude with artifacts that I can literally build stuff in minutes, and I've even got a design system for the curve tool. So if I'm building something and just vibing, I say use the curve design system. Give me a .csv uploader. Here's the headers for each of the columns, and then we'll troubleshoot that, and then we'll take it into another artifact where we'll put it into a sandbox so we can test the logic there to not break the main app, and then you can bring that over, and then you roll out the a markdown file with the handoff documentation, the code, and doing that stuff is just it's mind-boggling what you can do, and then 2 years out. But going back to the thing with sellers, and I said I'm living in the bubble. The flip side of that is just think of what is the most important thing for sellers is the finding the right products and pipeline. Invest that. Even if you spend a couple of grand, just keep building stuff. No one wants to sit there and search for products. Yeah. Find novel ways of doing it to speed up that process. So no one wants to be in spreadsheets.
I've been working on it at the moment, actually, is
Yeah. It's things like that. What moves the needle? Well, you know that you've always got to have a product pipeline. The more SKUs you start to build, that generally comes, the growth, and then you having the ability to get rid of products fast, because time is money, right? In the cheapest way possible, so you can launch the next one.
Yeah.
Right? There's an area. Put a grand behind that. And I'd say 1,000, if you're doing 1 million, 2 million a year, 1,000's not a lot of money when you think of what you're spending on PPC.
No, agreed.
Right? So even if you did that, as I said, you can have the flow builder. I'll give it to you after. I've built it all into a Notion doc, so I'll just share the link. But get into doing these things. You don't need to be a programmer. That's not your job. Someone else can go and spend 8 hours looking for a comma in the code. Do the shit that moves the needle, the stuff that you're good at, and just farm out the rest. Stop cutting corners and worrying about how many credits you got left, and I can't use it now till next month because it means upgrading from the 1999. It's your fucking business. Do you know what I mean? I see this all the time. So I sat down with someone a little while ago, and this is through that whole Manus thing. I said, what are you doing? I said, go and burn credits and sort your fucking business out. And that's all I did, night and day, until I solved everything. And then I said, Manus is going to fucking fly. You wait till it goes through the industry. Yeah, I use Manus, but the thing is, I haven't used it since I've run out of credits. And I'm like, exactly, that's why it won't fly. I was absolutely wrong, because that is a general mindset.
Yeah,
you're cutting cost on the wrong things.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is, like you said, I think the only heavy cost that sellers have been comfortable paying is pay-per-click / agencies around pay-per-click.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense because it's your second biggest cost outside of COGS in a typical Amazon business for most people.
Yeah.
So, and you don't really have a decision. It's a cost that you don't have a choice around paying. So I guess there's no price sensitivity because of that. But I always found it interesting that, let's say that you go to somebody and say, okay, for $10,000,
mm-hmm.
I can create 6-7 employees, all of your worst headaches go away. You can focus on what matters, the stuff that lights you up, also the stuff that's creative, high leverage, and that's impactful to your business, product pipeline, all that. I will do that for you, and it's going to cost you 10 grand plus $500 a month. Other than 8-figure sellers that kind of understand the game and leverage whatever else, most people are going to be like, no, there's no way I'd ever do that. Yeah. Meanwhile, they would spend 40 grand a month on advertising that, if optimized, could be 5 grand less, and they're paying an agency 3 grand to run it. Yeah. So it's a weird logic that I wonder if AI will flip. I don't think it is today. I don't think people see enough value, but I think, and that's where I think there's an advantage for people that are tip of the spear, that are willing to see the value in it, whatever else, because I think they can get a 6-month head start in this game is pretty powerful. But there is going to be the price sensitivity dynamic, which is really peculiar to our industry, where they're just cheap in a bad way. I think that there's frugal, which is thoughtful deployment of resources, and then there's cheap, which is tripping over $1 to get a cent. And I think that that's the mentality of a lot of Amazon sellers.
Well, you've had that with like VAs. You treat people with respect. Like, do you really want to get a $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour VA, right, realistically, so that you can micromanage them
Yeah.
and have to sit over their shoulder of all of them to do the work. You want them to get on with it, don't you? It's no point. How miserable of a job that is to deal with VAs who's got all you do all day is answer questions. How do you do this? What about this? I'm unsure. Da-da-da. Get proper people in where you can. Now, I understand when you're starting out, you've got to reduce resources, but I think some people take it pride. Yeah, do you know, I only pay $3 an hour for my VA.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet they're fucking shit and they hate you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Pay people properly. So yeah, look where you got to cut costs, and I know it's hard out there, and people being squeezed. But look at where you cut costs. Do it in the right place, like you said. You don't want to trip over pounds to get pennies.
There's times where it's very expensive to be cheap, and especially with opportunity costs, which is where this comes into play.
Well,
What would
time's
your
money.
business do if it wasn't for this thing, you know?
Yeah, and people forget your most valuable resource is where you put your time and attention.
Yeah.
People forget that because it's free. Like you can just give your time away and it doesn't seem like a cost. It is a cost because you can never get that back. And if your attention is on the wrong things, you're not going to do the right things.
Yeah.
So everyone thinks money is the most important resource. It's not, because it's where you put your time and attention. Why is that? Well, if you want to make money, generally speaking, what do you have to do? Put a lot of time and attention on it. Yeah? So the time and attention becomes before the money. And if you've got the attention on the wrong things, and I've been the world's worst for that, I'll just do things that I'm interested in, not necessarily what makes money, right? And that's on me. I've got ADHD, so I'll get a pass. But the point I'm saying is your time and attention, value it. You know, I'm 50 in November. I've probably got 30 good years left if I'll stay in the gym, even though my ferritin at the moment is 787. So the bottom of the range is like 50 and the top of the range is 200. My doctor hit the fucking roof.
What?
Ferritin is basically, call it iron overload. So basically right now, my cholesterol's through the roof and my liver's screaming. Even though I look healthy because I train or whatever, it's a misnomer. So basically my ferritin just keeps going like that. And I'm meant to give blood, but I can't because I've had a blood transfusion. So I can't donate blood. And then a couple of years ago, I went to the doctors and they said I don't have hemochromatosis because they did one test. They went, no, you haven't got it. Now the doctor called me in. He went, this is out of control. So now I'm waiting for an appointment for the NHS. And then I went to go private. Yeah, so mobile, someone comes to the home and do it. Then they want a letter from my doctor in the TRT clinic. And I'm like, no one wants accountability.
Buy a turkey and spend $4,000 and get them to run everything on you.
Well, you can't because of anemia, right? So you can't just, well, the idea is you have to have like a blood wetting, like venesection. So you remove the iron out your blood by donating blood, but you can't, your blood has to regenerate. So you can't just do it like pop out 10 pints for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you have to do is you have to withdraw blood, measure, withdraw, have your blood test. And again, so I think realistically to do it safely, minimum is going to be 4 weeks. Yeah. And then you retest and then do another 4 weeks because you can get caused anemia. So I'm doing that at the moment, but I built a Claude project. And what I did is I put all my blood work in there, everything. And now I've got like a chart showing over time. And so since 2023, my ferritin's gone up by 457 from 2023 when they did the test, when it was high anyway, right? Yeah. So I've got to sort that shit out on the personal side. But the thing is that the reason my cholesterol was high, it's a side effect that my liver is not obviously functioning the way it should. So it's pushed up the cholesterol. So they go, oh, you got high cholesterol. And I'm like, yeah, but how have I got high cholesterol? There are reasons, of course. Generally, as you get older, if you carry a lot more weight than I currently do, and you don't exercise, totally understandable. Or there's something to do with the volume of red meat, or maybe. But now that I've managed to build the Claude project, I put all my blood work in there, and then I've taken science literature, peer review medical science literature that is relevant in the UK and US, and that's all been synthesized. So now I've got all the cross references. So I actually have more information to give to my doctors. I'm not going to play Dr. Google. So where they're not taking the accountability and they're like, no, 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 get a letter. And then I'll go and get a letter off them. And they go, well, I can't do a letter for you because my insurance. So I'm now got a series of letters and a long breakdown, but it's all done like in a traffic light system. So you can see it. It's going green, 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 abnormal, abnormal, abnormal. And it's timelined. So I'm going to send them off tomorrow by email and say, just to put on record so that you have a receipt of a copy is what I'm doing, which is AKA, fuck, we don't want that on there. But, we don't want that smoke. So I'll probably get seen and then we'll move it forward. Yeah, because I think what you've got to look at, especially the medical, I love the NHS. They saved my life back in when I was 15 and I was on a life support machine. And they're overworked, right? But then you go private thinking you can solve it, but they want to cover their ass, so they want a letter. Yeah. So now what I'm doing is I've documented everything. I'm pushing it out to all the parties and say, so you've got it on file. I have a receipt that I've sent you this as the ferritin's gone up, and suddenly you will get bumped up the list because they're going, well, we don't want that accountability. Do you understand? Which is bullshit, really, that you got to do that. But at the end of the day, we're entrepreneurs. We have to find a way, don't we? So, how's your training?
Been slow the last couple of weeks. One thing that I've been doing since I got into Austin, I actually just got a cold. I've been fighting a cold like the last 4 or 5 days. So, but I've been riding my bike regularly. Vanessa Hung, a mutual kind of friend in the industry, good friend of mine. She had a birthday party in Colorado, so did my first 14er hike. So I think it's like 40 mountains in Colorado that are over 14,000 feet. I don't know what the meters is on that, but did one of those. So 8-hour day. So it was good. So yeah, it's kind of fun testing the body again, but I'm waiting for this cold to shake out before I hit the weights again. But so I'd say so, but again, one of the nice things I've got just down the street, I got my gym membership again. So kind of, again, part of the benefits of having a normal life is you get to have some structure to regular predictable things. So yeah.
Cool. Should we wrap? You got any final words?
No, I don't think so.
No. Cool. Back here again. First Tuesday of the month. Cool. So we've got it regulated now. So it's good to see you, guys. Thank you for joining us. Sorry about my moaning, but it's been one of them days. And thank you, Adam, for coming back on. Cool. And we'll do it all again. First Tuesday of the month. Next week we've got Main Image Monthly. The week after is the Blueprint with me, Awana, and Andrew Bell. And then week 4 is Go With The Flow with me, Ritu Java, and where people can just bring in their automations, and then awesome. Which is fine.
Yeah, cool, man. All right. Well, it was good seeing you.
You too. Take care, guys. I'll see you again next week.